I'm going to give you a little tour now of the ScaleBot user interface here. I'm going to pull out the main scale a bit so we can see it. I'm going to press any key to wake it up here from sleep. So the first three buttons on the top are to advance the workflow mode. That steps you through weighing your beans, pouring your espresso, adding your milk, etc. The first button is for me, Jesse. The second button is for my wife, Naoki. And the third button is for a guest. So it will remember the last coffee you used. And when it sends it to the internet, it records who made the coffee. The next button, Escape, just escapes whatever you're doing, whatever mode you're in or option you're setting. The 0 here is for zeroing out the tare. If you were using the scale as normal here, you could put your cup on, for example, or your portafilter, and then zero it out, or zero it back to normal. T is for timer. That starts the timer going. T again will stop it or clear it. The asterisk is sort of a go back button, and the end will put it to sleep. Let's turn off the timer here. Okay, so if we go into options by pushing down on this dial here, I'll walk you through the options. The first section is information. If we click to get into there, we can see here are the grind sizes of the different coffees we use. You can click once to modify this value. If while you're dialing in, this is where you would keep track of grind sizes. You also get access to this when you're in the workflow mode. Let's go back. Then there's a diagnostics section. We can get general information on how fast the iteration loop is running. We can get information about whether it's connected to the internet via a secondary Arduino board. We can get information on the scale calibrations, that's platform weight, what the multiplication factor is for the raw sensor values, etc. for both scales. We get little about information that gives us the version. Okay, next section is options. We've got a whole bunch of options. We've got two settings to calibrate each scale based on you calibrate it with 0 weight, you calibrate it with a heavy weight, and that's what it uses to calibrate its sensor values, map them to weight. So I have a 100-gram weight here that I use for calibration. You can set the weight of your calibration object. This can be useful because even if you don't have a calibration weight, for example, you might use the jar, your bean jar, or something you have nearby. If you know the weight of your tamper, you might use that. You can actually have it weigh the bean jar that you normally use. It will do that to help you. Normally during the workflows, when you measure the beans, you put the jar here and it tears that out automatically. But you don't actually have to use that. If you use the same cup to always weigh your beans, you can just measure it here, what the weight of it is, and then you could grind your beans and just put it on there and it'll know how much the bean jar weighs and so how many beans are in there. You can tell it to start up in scale mode or workflow mode. You can switch between what it's at now, which is showing the scale on the left, this secondary scale here, and the primary scale here. You could also switch it to automatically switch between them, whatever's got weight on it. Guess I'll go back to dual mode. You can choose the smoothing algorithm used to smooth out the weight sensor measurements to give you a nice clean measurement of the weight on there so it doesn't bounce around, but you've got some options there. You've got some options on how to calibrate the scales at startup. Normally you calibrate them once in a while with a known weight, and then when it starts up it knows the weight should be 0, so it might do some minor tweaking in the beginning. You can choose how that's done. You can choose how to auto same related thing to calibrating the scale. When it's 0, you can tell it to constantly monitor the weight, and when it thinks nothing's on it, change that. Make sure that's calibrated to 0. You can tell it the sleep time, how long before it automatically goes to sleep and wakes up. You can set it to bug mode. You can set how frequently it makes beeping sounds when you do some action. So if you want it totally silent, you could turn that to 0, and then you'd hear no more beeps. High beeps frequently. You can change the brightness of the LED screens here. You can have it round to 0.5s. Soft 0 means when it's, like if this was 0.1, it would still show as 0. This option, Coffee Select, determines whether it asks you to identify what coffee you're brewing with each time, to record it on the internet and to help you set grind size, but maybe you want to turn that off. Then we've got the display of water level. You can see from here it's showing the water level in the tank. It uses an ultrasonic sonar, which we can see here. You can't see here, but there's an ultrasonic sonar that's measuring the weight, and we can reboot or go to sleep. And there you have it. And that's what it would look like if there's low water.